Kentucky Civics, the duties, ha ha ha. All right, enough, kids. No, but Kentucky Civics, talking about the duties of the different public officials in the county. So you got 120 counties in Kentucky, and these are the public duties of the officials in those counties. Um, you got PBA, judge executive, county clerk, coroner, jailer. So, if everybody's corrupt, then they could get away with a ton, but the laws are set up to confine the behavior of civilized people. And if the sheriff started doing the budgets and the county judge executive started to keep all the marriage licenses and deeds, or the other public officials would have a fit because that's not within their limited scope of their jurisdiction of what it is that they're supposed to do. So they know their duties. They understand them, then they know exactly what they can get away with and what they can't. So the judge executive would always be the one who prepares the budget. If one of the magistrates says, I'm preparing the budget now, the judge executive would flip out of his chair. Ken McFarland would be like, nah, what the hell are you doing? I'm the one that makes the damn budget. You can't fucking introduce a budget to me. But that's what they did in Frankfurt. So theoretically, one of the magistrates could write up a budget and submit it to the court and says, well, we've looked at what you wanted, but here's what we want. And then their amendments could be sent to the state finance officer. So the magistrates, if they all got together and voted against something that the judge executive wanted, then they would actually get what they wanted. So they could influence it in that regard. The magistrates could submit their own budget and just say fuck the judges if they were smart enough to do it. That's what they did in Greg Stumbo did that in Frankfurt to Steve Brashear when he walked into power in the Frankfurt. I think really it's about having the public being informed, because if the public doesn't understand the division of jobs, then any position could do anything that they want to do, right? So the county, let's see, if the public knew about it, then they would, know that the county attorney would have to be at this fiscal court meeting. Every fiscal court meeting, Spike Wright has to be sitting in that chair. He has to. Every fiscal court meeting, he doesn't have a choice. He has to sit right there. That's Gallatin County. That's all county attorneys. Has to sit in the fiscal court meeting. They have to be there. When he's running fiscal court, it's up to the county attorney to also defend or sue the government if they overstep their bounds or if a crime has been put on them. So the county attorney could sue the government if he wants to. He could just straight up, if say the sheriff were being independent and judge executive was being independent and they're not listening to him, he could say, fuck you guys, you went overstepped your bounds, I'm suing you all. You all went too far. You guys are breaking the law and I'm going to stop you. He could do that. But typically he'll defend the government officials. He once said to somebody that he actually is the one who defends the cops. I'm the one that defends the cops. That's my job. I thought I know as a prosecutor you want to get as many convictions under your belt because that looks good on the resume, but you're not going anywhere. You're staying in Gallatin County. So who gives a fuck how many prosecutions you have? How many people's names you have totally fucked for, whether or not they had the evidence or not, whether you just compelled them to, submit to your will or not. It's about justice. It's about doing what's right and about making the situation better. A lot of times the cops, I know in my situation, the cops made the shit worse. Y'all didn't make it better, you made the shit worse, okay? That fucking psychopath has made the injustice that I get from Gallatin County it makes me sick to my stomach, okay? It all started in Gallatin County. That's where it all started. A psychopath fascist got to do whatever they want to do, and nobody gives a fuck. Nobody gave a fuck. Nobody still does give a fuck, but it's, I don't know. You expect some people are supposed to give a shit, and then when they ruin your trust, it's hard to trust anybody ever again, So I'm actually talking to Honest Babe. This is on topics, and she's writing a ton of good stuff about these positions. She's really thinking about who's the most powerful person in the county. She doesn't want to pick just one. So if all of them were completely honest, she would say that the judge executive holds the most power as a decision maker. The judge executive, is the face for the county. They're the ones that runs fiscal court. They're the ones that makes the decisions about what goes on, in the county. While the sheriff holds the most power as a law enforcement official. So they have to enforce the law, but the judge executive is the one that executes the law. I know it's a weird distinction, but the judge executive executes the law, and the sheriff executes it into force. Right? I guess it's the judge executive that has to say, hey, this is illegal, this needs to be done like this. If both of these two officials are completely honest and remain strictly within the powers of their offices, it would seem to me the county attorney really wouldn't have much authority over them. That's what honest baby. However, when dishonesty enters the picture, it could be anyone who holds the most power, a certain clique or grouping of officials, or all the above. Also, don't forget that the county clerk, whom also serves as chairman of the board of elections, the county clerk could hold a lot of power over all the other officials because they control the elections. And there's a lot of things that goes in with the elections. Since they control the voting machines, the absentee ballots, the precinct officers, who's going to be, in each one of the districts and sitting in the chairs, who's actually tallying the votes, who's counting the votes, who takes the machines, where the votes actually go. These are, and plus the absentee ballots. So when you get absentees, they're all being collected in one spot, and make sure those are being counted too, and make sure all votes are being counted. That's the county clerks. Falls on the county clerk, so that does give them a lot of power in that regard. If they're corrupt, if they're not corrupt, they would just do as as they're supposed to do. Count all votes. Every person's vote. Every vote matters. Every vote counts. Don't cheat. Have the machines out there for people to vote. Have them sign or whatever, their roster, have a name or whatever, however the fuck, the whole process unravels. But if dishonesty just get in the picture, I don't know how you would actually stop them from, being dishonest. How you would actually stop them from, swaying the vote one way or another. The county clerk, as chair of the county board of elections, is the one to prepare the election reports, which are sent to Frankfurt. In fact, in the county next door to McKee Jackson, the county clerk was charged and found guilty of, among other things, switching the votes of residents and helping prepare false election reports which intentionally contain inaccurate voting totals. I'll say that the authority would have the potential to strike a bit of fear among all the other officials. So they switched the votes of the residents, helped prepare false election reports. So the county clerk was charged and found guilty of it. So I don't know how they do that, if they could have got away with it, and who actually caught them. I guess that's a good a little research project. What happened, in this next to Jackson County? There was some corrupt county clerk. They got sued and got fucked up. So, they got sued and they got fucked up for being a corrupt bastards. But I'm sure corruption happens without people actually getting caught too. So when you have control over the elections, that warrants power. The sheriff has control over the elections if they're not running in the election. And also having control over taxes warrants power. Both of those are good points. In the county I'm from, the judge executive kind of has his hand in what everybody else is doing. The fair board kind of has its own autonomy, but judge executive is the man. He's the boss. The judge executive he's the man, right? So the man ran fiscal court, appointed lots of jobs, gave them a posse, loyal subjects. They had lots of, paid staff, lots of friends, lots of people on the side. The sheriff, yeah, he's the chief law enforcement agent, but he wasn't too bright. He would heavily lean on the judge executive and county judge to understand his role, to know exactly where he is allowed to be within the bounds of the law and how he was supposed to operate. Also, that budget, having the purse strings, that gives someone power too. So, being able to pay somebody, you're the boss. You're the ones, don't bite the hand that feeds. So if you're paying somebody, then you would expect compliance, right? You would expect them to do as they're told. But that doesn't mean that, Sometimes you just need a position because it needs to be there. The budget's the purse strings that has power. Really, that's the only real power that government has today. You can't just go around and take over, people's lands and raise a militia. In fact, some may say that's really the only power. Now, the county attorney was the chief prosecutor, and he sat on the fiscal court. Judge executive and county attorney were buddies. There's a new judge executive in town. He's different political parties, so that's a whole other dynamic. But they give the county attorney much sway in the business of the judge executive. So assuming judge executive and sheriff were the most powerful in the county, because the county attorney stated goals to be fiscal court's attorney and to be the chief prosecutor in the county, that gives him lots of leeway. The county attorney could overturn all the war on drug charges that come his way, and that would severely weaken the sheriff if war on drugs was his thing. So having a prosecutor that aligns with your worldview is ideal, but I think the prosecutor shows which issues he believes to be important by the time and resources that he spends on each case. Which people is he trying to throw the book at and make an example of? corporations, or the homeless. Who knows? I don't know any of your officials in Jackson County, so this is all purely hypothetical. So when the prosecutor says that he'll prosecute corporate criminals and non-seatbelt wearing offenders, but no war on drug criminals, then I bet the sheriff would stop with a prohibition. Then he would go after the corporate criminals and go after the people who don't wear seatbelts. Since, if it hasn't worked in the past, it won't work in the future. Also, everybody that the sheriff has arrested, the county prosecutor let go. So because he was just wasting his time. Throwing a book at people, well, the war on drugs, it's a public health issue. It's not a criminal justice matter. It's a public health issue. And the war on drugs has failed. You've had war on drugs for, 3,000 years? Has it worked? Have you got rid of the drugs? Is there still a drug problem all over Kentucky? Is there a shitload of meth and, I guess, heroin now in Louisville? So you have, more independent-minded sheriff could just arrest whoever, just expect the prosecutor to blindly endorse and rubber stamp all their alleged arrests. That's possible, and that could very well happen too. And if the prosecutor complains about the cop, then the sheriff could make a stink about it to the Commonwealth's attorney or somebody else. So it could just be a battle of wills. Who's more headstrong and who, thinks that they know the law and understand the law, who's got better friends coming out of Frankfurt, who's friends with the Commonwealth's attorney. When you're the head prosecutor, you're the one who gets to decide who's in and who's out. That's very important. You're allowed to jail and punish someone to the max, or you could just have it dismissed. Being the lawyer for fiscal court doesn't necessarily give the county attorney direct power, but whenever the judge executive needs to annex more land or eminent domain, some land for some, big sludge pond, he may need the county attorney's advice on those matters. How do you get away with this? How do we get away with putting all these toxins, right next to all these good people? So, it depends on the relationships. Again, I think it's the judge, executive, sheriff, and the other guy, the county attorney. Those are the three main guys. So Ken McFarland, Spike Wright, and Josh Neal are the three most powerful people in Gallatin County. Now, how that unravels out, I think specifically, I think you got to just sort of think about how it would unravel out. If you needed someone to write a law, that would be the Ken McFarland's position. If you need some new laws written, that would be Ken McFarland. If you need someone to enforce an existing law on the books, that's Josh Neal. And if you need some advice, legal advice, don't go to the county attorney because he's not for the people. He's for the government. He's for the governing elite. All the people who's in government, he's there to defend them. You would hope he's just a good person and he lets, his moral core dictate what's right and what's wrong, but people are, they ain't all, not everybody's the same. Not everybody's like me. Some people just will defend their friends and go after their enemies. They protect their buddies and fuck everybody else. So they could just have, certain friends that can get away with it and other people cannot. So, also, judges, I think judges is something to consider. The Michael Collins and Linda Bramlage and who else, Elizabeth, whatever her name was in Grant County. Fucking hate her. But I hate them all, actually, all these fucking judges. They don't give a shit about justice or what's actually right or fair. They don't look at the facts. They don't try to, it's not an inquisitive thing. It's like who's right, who's wrong. It's more about who seems like, if you have a lawyer, you'll be taken serious. If you don't have a lawyer, they'll fucking laugh at you. Ha ha ha, what, you're going to defend yourself? Fuck you. You don't have a lawyer. You'll accept whatever the fuck we throw at you. And I think that's bullshit. That's not fair. That's not right. So the prosecutor can bring anybody up for whatever charge, but if the judge doesn't agree, so the circuit court judge, if they don't agree, then it doesn't matter, so fuck them. Fuck the prosecutors, fuck the sheriff, fuck everybody. If the judge doesn't agree with what the prosecutor and the cops are saying, they get to do their own thing. So the judges are a pretty powerful position in the criminal justice system, in the judicial branch of government. One of the three equal branches. There's legislative, executive, and judicial. Jesus Christ is a pretty powerful person too, but I don't know what this guy's talking about. Jesus, coming down with Jesus, it has nothing to do about the power of people in government. According to your example, considering County X, it would seem that the judge, executive, and county attorney were pretty much equally sharing the role of the most powerful. So that's what they're saying was before, because I was saying that Spike Wright and Kenny French were, buddies. So they all were always in contact with each other, and they were always talking to one another about what they think is best for the county.